Yo, welcome back to another edition of the Players Ball Podcast where we cover all sports far and wide. I'm your host, Roddy. Go ahead and give us a follow at the Players Ball 1 on Twitter, and then give us a follow on Instagram at the Players Ball Podcast. Then go ahead and give me a follow, okay, at Roddy404 on both platforms. Thank y'all so much for being patient with me. I understand that I haven't been as consistent as I wanted to be with this podcast. I've been trying to put a lot of energy into our Saturday podcast with me and my guy Dumb Brain Picks, aka Sam. That is on Saturdays. It's called Pay for Play, our college football sports hour where we're giving away the best bets in college football that you can find. So please subscribe to us at Win the Day TV, and then go ahead and search for Pay for Play. We should be on there, going live every Saturday of the college football season at 10 a.m. Eastern. But I do understand I can at least put out one a week. You know what I'm saying? I can give you my thoughts on these other sports because I'm watching all of these other sports. Okay, I'm watching the NFL, been watching the MLB playoffs, which we'll talk about. And I will be watching tonight the NBA. The NBA is indeed back tonight. We have the Warriors and the Suns linking up out there in the Bay. And then our early game is going to be the champion Denver Nuggets against the LA Lakers. Now, I want to get into a few previews that I have. We'll do the big three like usual on the show, and we'll do a little bit of talking about the three most, I guess, interesting topics in this upcoming NBA season, to me at least. We will, like I said, go over some of the MLB playoffs, go over some of the things that are happening in college football as well as the NFL. But I do want to start with the Sixers. Now, the 76ers have had, over the last 2 years, a lot of drama. More drama than I would probably want if I was a Sixers fan. Obviously, looking back at the track record of the last 10 years of the Philadelphia 76ers, there's been a lot to talk about, all right? There's been no shortage of topics with this basketball team, specifically with their star players. Now, if you've been living under a rock this offseason, you probably didn't hear this, but let's take a look at what their star player, or at least one of their star players, was saying over in China when he went to do, I guess this was like the promo for his new shoes or something like that. I don't know. He's beloved in China anyway. So let's see what he had to say about his general manager who he's been with since Houston.
I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of. Let me say it again. Daryl Morey is a liar, and I will never be a part of an organization that he's a part of.
Yeesh. Now, look, I know James, first of all, him having to say it twice is hilarious. Like, just the fact that he wanted to be clear, this man is a liar, and I'll never play for an organization that he works for again. Now, you're wondering why James Harden said that, and the reasoning is that he was promised by Daryl Morey a contract extension with the 76ers in the offseason, but due to the play being a little bit diminished, I wouldn't say he had last year, but definitely one of his more down seasons. He's he's a different player now. I'll say that for a fact. And he was promised a contract extension when he came there. And Daryl Morey has been unwilling to give that to him. Now, I don't really know why James Harden keeps doing this. I mean, I understand that the guy, was promised something that he is not being given. I get why he's upset, but it just seems like James is being a lot more trouble than he's worth. If the team is not willing to pay you, especially a guy, like I said, who's been with you since Houston, and he don't want to pay you, that might be a sign that you might need to realign what you think about yourself as an NBA basketball player in 2023. But you know how these NBA players are. They're very arrogant. They think highly of themselves. Not saying it's wrong, okay? You do all of this work and you overcome the odds, especially with James coming from Compton, California, and being in the NBA for as long as he has. I can understand why he feels so highly about himself. Also a former MVP, but the role is different. Just is. Joel Embiid is the star of that team. He was last year's MVP. You saw the offense run through Joel at the beginning of the year last year, James, should I say, at the beginning of the year last year, and it not really look how it should look. I don't think they were bad, but they weren't going to reach their full potential if you were looking for James to be that main scorer and facilitator. So they changed up the offense a little bit going into the midway point of the season. Try to rely on Joel getting either to the line, getting those foul line jumpers that he likes, and just feeding him the ball on most of the possessions. All right, his usage went way up from the beginning of the season to the midway point and then to the end, which ultimately resulted in him winning that MVP. Right, but I just think that if you're looking at this team going into the season, Tyrese Maxey also didn't get an extension. However, I think he's going to get a max. If I had to guess, I think that is going to be their cornerstone player going forward to pair with Embiid. And they got to figure out what to do with James Harden at this point. Now, while I do think that this team is going to be a top 6 team, again, not have to worry about a play-in, I do worry if I'm obviously the Sixers, what we can do in order to keep up with some of these teams who did make big changes in the offseason. A lot of you NBA followers will know that Dame Lillard went from the Portland Trailblazers over to the Milwaukee Bucks, strengthening that side a lot. They're going to have Giannis, Dame, and Middleton, which sounds like a lethal combo. Now, I do understand that they had a major L that they took in the playoffs last year to the Miami Heat, basically only winning one game and getting smoked in the other 4. I do think that team is going to be way better. I think they're going to be a little bit more formidable, and I think they likely get that number 1 seed this year. Look at what Boston did. Obviously, trading away Rob Will for front court depth is a little bit concerning, but you do have Kristaps Porzingis coming onto that team. You have Jaylen Brown, who signed his Supermax this offseason as well. So he will be paired with Jason Tatum, who might be looking to re-up soon here as well. And you add also Drew Holiday from the Bucks, who is going to be that facilitator and defensive level piece that they needed after trading Marcus Smart. So with that being said, the Sixers finishing top 3 is potentially in jeopardy. I do think that on paper, the Sixers are the 3rd best team, but you never know how these NBA seasons go. Okay, there are a lot of promising teams, like a team we'll talk about later, my personal favorite, the Hawks. That might be challenging for that 3rd spot this year with improved coaching and improved player personnel. But ultimately, I do think if the Sixers can get James back into the building, if they can get their mindset going correctly, I think they will continue to be the 3rd best team in the league, or the conference, should I say. But again, it's all contingent on how, 1, James Harden is, if he is there, and 2, the morale of the team while he is there. I know if I'm Joel Embiid, I'm kind of sick of this guy and his antics, not going to lie to you. I mean, I know that, again, he's an MVP level player, but I would be done with the antics, man. Like, only coming off of Ben Simmons and that drama, him not showing up to practices and not giving his best effort, you traded him for a guy who's going to come in and do the same thing. Now, maybe James's premises on why he's being a disgruntled superstar is more valid than Ben's, but I don't want to deal with the drama if I'm Joel. I'm going to be honest with you. I feel like he's too deep into his career to be worried about this level of stuff. So we'll see what happens with the Sixers. Don't have a ton of optimism, like I said, but I think ultimately they'll be able to figure it out and finish at absolute floor, top 6. So we'll see what happens. But let's pause on our big 3 for a second and get into our NCAA football and NFL updates. All right, now let's get into the NFL first. Ravens smacked the hell out of the Lions this past Sunday. Really not a close game. Probably was everybody's game of the week going into it if it wasn't the Dolphins and the Eagles. But the Ravens just came out and looked like a competent offensive team. There have been some issues in some of the games this year. But as my guy Sosa says, they've been pretty much dominant in every single game that they've played this year at certain points. Just haven't always finished them. In that Steelers game, they were pretty dominant through the first half. Fell off a little bit in the second half. Gonna, shoot them a little bit of bail because that is a division opponent. And we'll talk about the Steelers a little bit later in this segment, because the fact that those boys only have 2 losses, it's crazy. Okay, but the Ravens showed that they not only can rush the passer, being the #1 leader in sacks this year without really a dominant or elite pass rusher, but also the offense clicking and clicking and clicking. Lamar threw 26 passes and had 300 yards with ease. He had 250, I believe, in the first half as well. So Lamar is looking like MVP Lamar, to be honest with you. I would say he's probably in the first place spot when it comes to the MVP race at the moment. But we'll see what happens going on throughout the season. As for the Lions, I think this is a hard loss to take. Obviously, coming off a big win in Tampa Bay last weekend, I think it's kind of hard to stomach the fact that they weren't able to get the job done and get blown out. But they got a freebie against the Raiders at the crib next Monday night, so I think they'll be fine with that. Now, the other big surprise of the weekend probably was yesterday's game. The Vikings pulling off the upset against the Niners. Niners with no Trent Williams, no Deebo Samuel. Christian McCaffrey played a little bit banged up, but it still wasn't enough. Jordan Addison also is probably one of the biggest steals of the draft. The fact that he went 15 spots without being taken by a team is a little bit remarkable for me. The Vikings just seem to know how to pop out these receivers for real. Obviously, Jettas being the offensive player of the year last year. They got another good receiver in Addison. They traded Diggs away, who is having a great season up there in Buffalo again. Adam Thielen, even though he's the only real receiver up there in Carolina, he's having the best season of his career as well. So I'm really optimistic for the Vikings. I wouldn't say that I have the expectation of them coming back and competing for the division, especially with how the Lions schedule is setting up with the second place schedule. But I am really optimistic, if I am a Vikings fan, that we could potentially claw our way into the wild card spot. And that's all they really need, to focus on winning games and, staying in games. Obviously, they had the stat of, being, I think, undefeated in one-score games last year. I had the same luck this year. I think they've lost all 4 of the one-score games that they've been in. But they've pushed pretty much every team that they've played to the brink. So we'll see what happens with that Vikings squad. I think, like I said, the NFC, other than the Eagles, the Niners, and that's really it. Like, I think they can take hold of one of those wild card spots, with the wild card teams that are in contention just looking not the greatest. I think that'll be good for them. So we'll see what happens. Now to, a topic that I don't really want to talk about, but it's my team and I have to take accountability for myself. Okay. The Saints lost to the Jags. Horrible first half performance by the Saints. Only 9 points scored in the first half. Another first half with no touchdowns for the Saints. It's really maddening to watch the Saints offense week in, week out, bro. I was on an airplane watching that, and it was, I don't even want to talk about it, okay? But I think the Saints, their issue is just camaraderie right now. You have Derek Carr yelling at Chris Olave for not running the right route. You got Michael Thomas coming on Twitter a couple of days later saying that Chris should have run the route to the best of his ability. However, the read wasn't supposed to be to him. And if I'm a Saints fan, which I am, that is concerning that in week 7 of the season, you guys are still having timing issues. You're still having camaraderie issues. We even have Alvin Kamara, okay, running the wrong routes, which is not ideal, bro. Okay, it's not ideal. And we need a little bit more camaraderie within the offense, which I think will help us. The just surplus fade routes in the red zone is just god awful. The red zone offense in general has been hard to watch, but I think the season is still early. With the division being so weak, I do not think we're out of it whatsoever, but we need the camaraderie, like I'm saying. And Chris Olave, his luck, again, just is not getting better. He was arrested on Monday night for going 70 in a 35 miles over in Kenner, Louisiana, which, if you know anything about Kenner, Louisiana, that's just the wrong place to be speeding at black people, okay? Just putting that out there. But it is what it is. He's out of jail now. I don't think there'll be any discipline from the NFL nor the Saints on this. I think he'll get a stern talking to about how dangerous that behavior is, and then I think he'll be on the field. But him just, I guess, potentially being the scapegoat of the season wasn't really something that I expected. But, you know, I guess that's just how the Saints season is going, man. It just is going terrible. That's why I didn't want to talk about it, okay? But to keep it pushing, like I said, the Eagles, they had a great matchup, a highly anticipated game against the Miami Dolphins. But before we get into that game, I want to get into them fleecing the Tennessee Titans once again, okay? They fleeced them for the A.J. Brown trade. They fleeced them again with getting Kevin Byard for a throwaway safety and I think a 4th and 5th round pick. Byard, obviously, aging safety, not, you know, the highest potential on the upside going forward. However, all he has to do is just be good enough. I think that is something that he can do, given what the system is that he's going into in the pass rush that they have, which look dominant again. Jalen Carter looked amazing. Nolan Smith is starting to get entered into the rotation a little bit. So shout out to my dogs, man. Jordan Davis is having a way better season than he did last year, which, you know, it really makes me proud for him, because I honestly did think that he was a little underwhelming last season, but he's looking like he's a real stopper in the run game. Got a half a sack last game, so it should be looking on up and up for them. And they right now look like the best team in the NFC. You know, they really haven't had a lot of injuries, which hopefully continues for them. But with the Niners losing, I don't really see a team being better than the Eagles. The Niners losing 2 in a row, actually, to Cleveland, who had some struggles with Indy. But I think that Indy is a damn good team with the defense. And Gardner Minshew is a lot better than people give credit for. But, you know, it is what it is. So that is our NFL update. We'll be looking forward to the upcoming week. Better matchups. I think the slate on paper last week was a little trash, but I think we're going to get better production from the slate next week. So we'll definitely be talking about that in Thursday's episode. Now, all right. So in college football, we had a couple of things. The Dogs were obviously off this past weekend. We have our big matchup down there in Jacksonville against the Florida Gators. Huge matchup coming up. I'll probably get into it a little bit more on Thursday's show, because I want to keep this as a recap of the previous weekend. But we'll start with the big noon game. Ohio State trumps Penn State, and kind of a, like Jim Ross said, a slobber knocker type of a matchup. Ohio State wasn't really able to get a ton offensively, but Penn State's timely penalties killed them. The lack of quarterback play, which a lot of Penn State fans told me that Drew Aller was going to be the best of what they've had so far. And if you know what they've had so far, that ain't really saying a lot. So I really do think that Penn State is in the Big Ten to produce defensive talent and then, you know, give Michigan and Ohio State a push every year. But ultimately, I knew they probably weren't going to win this game. We did win a bet on paid for play with Ohio State covering at 5.5. Some people had 4.5. I told you to take either, and it ended up cashing. So that's why you got to watch paid for play, all right? But ultimately, I think Ohio State has pretty much locked their position in the college football playoff. Michigan pretty much has locked their position in that too. They will play Penn State as well, but I think they beat Penn State too, and they both will be in the college football playoff no matter who loses, unless one team blows out the other and just looks like they're in a different class, but I doubt that happens. Now, to go to the SEC, Bama came back against Tennessee at the crib in the cigar game, and I mean, look, man, I didn't think that Tennessee was going to win that game for 1 second. All right. I texted Sam and I told him, just watch and wait, bro. Just watch and wait. Bama's coming back. I already know how they do things. They're going to look like they were absolute trash in the first half, which is what they did. Then they came back to win the game and cover that 8.5. Didn't give out the 8.5. I gave out Alabama's first half, which was a loser, obviously, since Tennessee was up. But, I mean, you just saw Tennessee wet the bed in the second half, to be frank with you. Heupel's play calling was a little bit questionable. Joe Milton's accuracy, like we said on the show, was really, really bad. The receivers over there for Tennessee just aren't the greatest, man. They just aren't. So, no surprise here. Bama putting themselves in firm position to potentially go to the SEC championship as long as they win their matchup with LSU coming up in 2 weeks. But I think that LSU can definitely push them like no other team that they've played before. But LSU's defense is still a huge concern for me. I can't put a lot of faith into them beating, Bama, especially in Tuscaloosa, if they can't play no defense, which I think will come into play. Now, Jalen Milroe, again, I don't think he's been the greatest, but I think he has been good enough to get them over the hump. The defense has been performing pretty well. The secondary from Bama, which I don't love, has improved over the last couple of weeks. So I think they could potentially get better and, throw up an SEC championship in Atlanta against us. I think we're going to get there, regardless of what happens with Brock. But that is our NCAA NFL update. Now let's get into point number 2 for the Big Three. All right. Point number 2 is my Hawks, baby. All right. Now, I understand that last year was quite a disappointing season. We went up against the number 1 seed in the Boston Celtics, or they were actually the 2 seed. We won the 7 seed by beating the hell out of the Miami Heat, who went to the finals. Like, what the hell? Anyway, the Hawks have new coach Quinn Snyder under a full season, a full offseason as well. Throughout the preseason, I saw that this offense looks a lot different, dog. I'm not going to lie to you. You have Trae Young playing a lot more off ball, him not really loafing defensively as well, which was a good sign. Obviously, it is the preseason, so I'm not going to take a huge amount of stock into it. But I think the 2 things that the Hawks needed on this team have been figured out. I think we needed a guard to come off the bench and give us not only facilitating, but give us a little bit of scoring as well. In the past, we've had guards more on the defensive end of the spectrum and not really on the offensive end of the spectrum, which did cause us a few problems going in later into the playoffs. But we now have Cody Buffkin coming out of Michigan, who has looked great. I'm not even going to lie. And again, it is the preseason, but he looked damn good in the preseason, Cody Buffkin did. And I have high expectations from him. Guessing he's coming off of the bench with DeJounte and Troy starting. DeAndre Hunter is going to be another guy who I'm looking for improvement from. The last 2 seasons have been a tad bit disappointing because I felt like he's had the chance to improve his game, but there's still issues from 3. There's still some issues on the defensive end with some of the higher-end players in the league, and he comes from a system of Virginia where he was taught how to play defense at a high level by a great defensive coach. So a little concerning there, but I do think that DeAndre is going to be a little bit better this season. If he can get his 3 ball going, I think that'll be great. We got Sadiq Bey. We didn't sign him to an extension, which means he's going to be a free agent coming up after this season, which is kind of good in some senses because he's going to want to perform at his highest standard in order to get the money either from us or somewhere else. Bogdan Bogdanovic coming back. He's going to be our sniper, a guy who can play with Cody Buffkin and Sadiq Bey and stretch the floor. His dribbling and defense is my biggest concern going into the season. However, I don't think with the other key additions that we have added to the team, as well as the system change, I don't think it'll be as detrimental to the team's success as it has been in the past. Now, Onyeka Okongwu signed an extension for 4 years, $62 million, which is honestly a steal, bro, if we're being honest. With Clint Capella being on the trading block at some instances for the last 2 seasons, his contract expiration coming up as well. I think getting a guy like that on that type of deal is a bargain. Now, obviously, looking at the numbers, you might think that, whoa, he's getting a lot of money for a guy who is going to be coming off the bench potentially again this year. However, I do think that he is going to be our starter going forward if and when we do, move on from Clint. And I think this is a steal of a price. Now, will he command more money in the future? Yeah, he probably will, but that'll be based off of him performing up to a high level, which I think he's fully capable of. So I'm really excited that we got him locked in for the next 4 seasons. Now, my expectations for the Hawks is for them to finish top 6. Looking around at the landscape of the Eastern Conference, we have a lot of teams who can potentially be in the mix. Don't really have high hopes and expectations for the Cavs, to be honest with you. The Knicks, we'll see what happens there. I think their season last year may not be able to be duplicated, but who knows? They could potentially get that top 6 spot again and have to fight for that top 7 seed. With the Heat, I think this is finally the year that they regress. I know that I've been saying it probably for the past 2 seasons about the Miami Heat that they're going to regress, but with the fact that they have lost a lot of their pieces like Gabe Vincent, Max Strus to different teams, obviously not trading Tyler Hero, but having him on the trade block might affect his mental. Don't really know how that's going to square, but I don't think that this team is going to have another Cinderella run in them. I do think Jimmy's amazing. I think Bam's amazing as well, who didn't get a contract extension before the deadline as well, which will be interesting to watch to see if Miami moves on from him. I just don't think they're going to be in contention for top 6. Now, top 7 to top 8, I think is very much realistic for this basketball team, but they are just not the greatest at the guard position. While Tyler Hero can score, he's a traffic cone on defense. While Kyle Lowry is a veteran guy, I don't have a lot of faith in him doing a lot of needle moving in terms of the point guard position. Now, is it possible that some of these lower level tier teams like the Orlando Magic, who did have a promising future ahead of them, Paulo Banchero looked elite damn near last year. They could, but I just don't see it with them quite yet. I do think they finish in one of the play-in spots, but I don't think they'll compete for the top 6. So with the veteran presence on top of the youth that the Hawks have, including Jalen Johnson moving into the 4 role now that John Collins is over there in Utah, I think the Hawks are primed for a top 6 position this year. So let's hope we can get that, and let's hope that the Hawks exceed expectations this year. All right, now we covered 2 of our topics. Let's get into the MLB playoffs, which we haven't talked a lot of MLB this year, but I'm really interested in what's going on there. So let's get into it. All right, the MLB playoffs are almost done, man. I hate that. Obviously, the Braves lost to the Phillies again for the 2nd year in a row. The Phillies just seem to be on fire as soon as they see the Braves, okay? We won't even get into Bryce Harper staring down Arcia, the monster series that he had against the Braves, as well as Nick Castellanos. He's hitting, 2 home runs, multiple games. Okay, it's hard to win like that. The Braves pitching did fall off of a cliff as well, which was one of my main concerns for the Braves coming into the season, just because we weren't really able to get that 3rd, 4th rotational guy and get him into a consistent position. Bryce Elder got lit the hell up in Philly, so it is what it is, man. But the Phillies seem like they ran out of gas a little bit. Nick Castellanos has only had 1 hit in the entire series against the D-backs. The D-backs won on Monday night, pushing a Game 7 in Philly tonight, which should be very interesting. I do think that the potential of the D-backs pulling this off is very, very high. I assume that Zach Wheeler is going to go for the Phillies tonight as well. And the bats have just slowed down, okay? With Trey Turner and Castellanos and Bryce Harper having a generational series last series against the Braves, they've slowed up a little bit against the D-backs. And give credit to the D-backs. Pitching has been great. The hitting is starting to come through a little bit more for them. And it's going to be a tough atmosphere, Okay, Philly probably has the best atmosphere damn near in sports right now. If we're talking about professional sports and playoffs, I mean, that crowd is rocking every single home run, every single hit. You can hear and you can feel the energy in that crowd. So we'll see what happens. And I would choose probably the D-backs if I had to right now. Once you see a team start to figure out the pitching getting hot, there were some instances in the earlier innings where they walked Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos to get to players like Alec Bohm, who's been struggling all offseason for the Phillies. But, I mean, I don't know. Maybe the bats can come alive. Maybe the energy of the crowd is going to bring them back into the fold and they can win this Game 7 to advance against the Texas Rangers in the World Series. Now, let me just tell y'all, this Texas Rangers team is a juggernaut damn near. I think I tweeted this a little bit earlier on my personal page, but they've been dominant, bro. When I tell you that just looking at them on paper at the beginning of the season, they had pitching, they had some pretty decent hitting, but I didn't think it was going to be this. I didn't think they were going to come into Houston in a Game 7 and beat them 11-4 like they did. The hitting has been phenomenal. They have not lost a road game this entire playoffs, which is crazy to me. They just get off to hot starts against any team that they face, whether it's been the Orioles or Tampa or, obviously the Rangers now. So it would probably be my favorite to win the World Series. I know they did go to Game 7 against the Astros, so they haven't just walked through these, or they didn't walk through this last series like they did the previous two. But I definitely feel like the, luck that they have is going to continue, man. I don't have any reason to see why it shouldn't. And if you're looking at just the baseline of pitching and hitting, I say the advantage would go to the Rangers regardless of which team they face, either the Phillies or the D-backs. So the Rangers, man, I really am liking this baseball team. I'm really thinking that they're going to be the World Series champions. You usually can see, based off the consistency throughout the playoffs, who is going to win the World Series. I think the Astros gave you that level of consistency last year. The Phillies did start to wane kind of like they did in the NLCS last year as they did this year. So we'll see what happens. But the MLB playoffs have been exciting. I think it's very, very criminally underrated in terms of the hierarchy of these different playoffs in the professional sports. So if you haven't been watching, definitely tune in tonight for that Phillies and D-backs Game 7 to see who will be playing for the World Series. Now, let's get to the end of the show and our last topic on the Big Three. Big Vic. All right, man. Our third topic. This guy is just, I want to know, what are you supposed to do when you have the basketball and you have this guy guarding you? Now, look, I know the guy who, the Spurs training staff member, he probably like 5'8" on a good day. Okay, I'm not the tallest guy either, but how the hell are you supposed to offensively work against that? We can't show the highlights here, but Wemby had a block against Andrew Wiggins that was ridiculous. He had a block against Klay Thompson 3 where he jumped damn near from the free throw line and still blocked the shot. I just can't see this guy losing the Rookie of the Year to anybody barring injury. I think Defensive Rookie of the Year is totally in play. He's definitely going to be a challenger to Jaren Jackson for the blocks leader this year for sure. And, I mean, he's had plus 1,200 for not Rookie of the Year, but Defensive Player of the Year for all players. So I think he's definitely a lock for Defensive Rookie of the Year, lock for a Rookie of the Year, lock for an All-Star barring health, complications. And I think the one thing that will come into play that I'm most interested in seeing is how is Pop going to handle Wemby's health? How is he going to handle the load management, which the NBA has cracked down on with the new rules of saying that you can have only one star player sit out and, the other player isn't injured, have to play. But with Greg Popovich being the guy who is the inventor of load management, I'll be interested to see some of the interesting tricks and shenanigans that they'll be willing to play in order to get this guy some rest. You're already seeing some of the other teams in the league, like the Suns, with Devin Booker saying he was 50-50 earlier this morning to play tonight against the Warriors, and then him saying that he's likely to play. Then you had Brad Beal on Monday night saying he'll likely play, and then him being announced out with back issues this morning. So you never know with the NBA and their, injury manipulation. Shams and Woj are two guys who are going to be manipulating these betting lines. So if you're an NBA bettor, please be careful, okay? Listen to our guys that call in the shots. We have the Players Club with Sosa opening up very soon that he plans to announce. So very excited about that. I will be in that community as well. So definitely be dropping some plays that I'm confident on in there. But ultimately, I think this is going to be the Victor Wembanyama show. There are going to be a lot of good teams in the league. Like I mentioned previously, the Bucks having Dame on their roster is huge. The Suns getting Brad Beal is huge. But I think we're going to have all eyes on San Antonio this upcoming season. So I'll be very interested to watch. I might just watch every single Spurs game this year. If I don't catch it live, I might have to catch the playback. Not really thrilled to watch the Spurs if Wemby isn't playing, but you never know. He might play all 82 games. I really highly doubt it just because, like I was saying, how Pop feels about the load management. But he's my most interesting player to watch in the whole NBA. I do agree with everybody. I was a little bit hesitant at first. I'm not going to lie that he was the best prospect since LeBron. But watching that kid play, bro, I'm telling y'all right now, that is the truth. That is the future. And that is that dude. So we'll be interested to see what Wemby can give us this upcoming NBA season. But thank y'all for watching. Please subscribe, like this video. Follow us at The Players Ball 1 on Twitter, at The Players Ball Podcast on Instagram. Then go ahead and follow me at Roddy404 on both platforms. We will be back on Thursday. Hopefully we can get a guest. If not, I will be here flying solo to give y'all a little bit of a preview for our Pay for Play show, as well as the upcoming week in the NFL and in the NBA and the MLB. We're going to have all 4 sports on this weekend. So if you're going out, I know it's Halloween weekend, but if you're going out, you got stuff to do, have a screen by you, okay? Because you're going to miss a lot of good stuff, all right? But until Thursday, we'll holler at y'all later, man. Peace.